o'clock, so I'll call tonight's council meeting to order. Karen, can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick?
Here.
Councilmember Byström?
Here.
Councilmember Munson? Councilmember Valento? And Mayor Bain.
Here. I invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, we have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve or any suggested changes.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda. Or,
Second.
excuse me, agenda.
I'll second
We have a-
the motion.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and our agenda is approved. Our next item this evening is open forum. Open forum is any interested party's opportunity to address us, address council on any topic of your choice. Okay. And we have one member for open forum this evening, Mr. Shipp.
My name is Donald E. Shipp. At the last city council meeting, I informed the city council about the following. The city of Forest Lake violated hangar owners' contracts at the airport by charging us for part of the runway paving project. I quoted former city administrator Aaron Parrish, who admitted to the contract violation. I detailed how city council member Sam Husnick paid for part of my outstanding bill. I detailed how the city threatened to kick me off the airport for not paying the unlawful charges. How did this happen? It happened in 2016 due to Ed Eigner being uninformed and Rick Ashback knowingly advancing a contract violation. Here is a quote from then City Council member Ed Eigner from the Forest Lake Times. He, meaning Ed Eigner, told Airport Commission member Rick Ashback, one of the primary drivers for getting the runway paved, that he would like to see some more skin in the game from local airport users and hangar owners, akin to the special assessments residents of a city block would pay if improvements were made to their road, unquote. How did Rick Ashback respond? He capitulated to Ed Eigner's demands and created a fee schedule for hangar owners. Here it is. This fee schedule is intended to charge hangar owners over $85,000 to help pay for the runway paving project. Aaron Parrish claimed that it's rent. It is not rent. This proposal was passed by the Airport Commission, with Commission member Donald L. Shipp being the only dissenting vote. Several hangar owners voiced objections to Airport Commission members before they passed it. Donald L. Shipp specifically warned Rick Ashback to not present his proposal in advance because it was a contract violation. Forest Lake was offered a 90% grant to pave the runway by MnDOT Aeronautics. Where do they get their money? It does not come from taxpayers. It comes from actual user fees. MnDOT Aeronautics is entirely funded by fuel taxes, aircraft registration fees, and air flight property taxes. Pilots pay and pay and pay. We do not need to get more skin in the game. As per our contracts, hangar owners are required to pay rent per square foot for their lots at the airport. To attempt to bill us for a runway paving project is not rent and therefore a contract violation. This city council did not create this contract violation. You do have the opportunity to fix it. This is never going to go away until this injustice is fixed properly. The city needs to refund us for the unlawful charges that were placed upon hangar owners for 4 years. Thank you for your time. I will email you all a copy of these documents.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in open forum this evening? All right, with that, we will close open forum and bring discussion back to council. Council, for your consideration tonight is consent agenda items 6A through 6K, and I will entertain a motion or any changes.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve consent agenda items A through K.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to our regular agenda this evening, starting with 7A, resolution for a donation. And we'll hear from Chief Newman.
Whereas in honor of Don and Frank Thill has submitted a donation to the City of Forest Lake Fire Department in the amount of $500, and whereas Don and Frank Thill made this donation to support the fire department, and whereas the Forest Lake City Council is appreciative of the donation and finds that it is appropriate to accept the donation offered, we are requesting that the Forest Lake City Council accept this donation from Frank and Don Thiel.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Council, is there a motion?
Mayor Bain, I move adoption of resolution 06-13-22-02, donation from Don and Frank Thel for fire department general use with gratitude.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. Thank you so much. Next item tonight is 7B, Resolution 613-2203, Gateway Green PUD Amendment. And Nathan, you're walking us through this.
Thank you, Mayor Bain. I'm going to take a moment here to put up visual on the screen. Should be coming up here. So what you see in front of you is the Gateway Green PUD. This was approved in 2004 and had about 216 units proposed within. What we are looking at currently is a request to adjust the specifically four lots in the northwest corner here, and you can see the cursor is circling them right now. Those lots are being proposed to be adjusted from 4 units to 3. And so what you see here is what's being proposed by our applicant. They are looking to simply adjust those lots and to not build a portion of the sidewalk that was included in the original PUD. That portion is shown in red on the screen here in the annotation made by staff. So those are the two requests that are in front of the council this evening. The Planning Commission did review those. But first I'll kind of talk a little bit about the zoning here. Land use and density are both consistent with the city code, the comprehensive plan, and the PUD that was approved for this area. It appears that this proposal does meet the performance standards established for these lots. A public hearing was held at the Planning Commission's May 11th meeting. We did not receive any comments from members of the public on that and have not received anything since. Staff did review this for parking as well, and the Planning Commission was satisfied with staff's recommendation of approval. So the Planning Commission did a review of the PUD criteria and ultimately made the determination that this proposal was consistent with those criteria. They did unanimously motion to approve this for your consideration. Next steps for this project would be to approve, if the City Council does approve the request this evening, it would be an administrative approval of the lot line adjustment and then processing a building permit for this building. So with that, the Planning Commission recommended a motion to adopt resolution supporting this request. That resolution would be 613-2203. We do have 6 conditions of approval suggested for you. That's all I have prepared. I think the applicant is here this evening, so if you have any questions of him, you're able to ask him then.
Terrific. Thank you, Nathan. Nathan, one quick question. Can you bring up the whole site?
Yep.
The whole site view one more time? I just want to make sure I understood the rationale for, I think there's some indication in the staff memo about why the sidewalk is being removed. Can you talk me through that just again?
Sure.
With full context?
Yeah, so you can see here, and in this kind of sketch plan here, this PUD plan, there is a sidewalk shown that wraps around this building. Initially, these buildings were proposed with walk-up entries that were actually fronting that sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
So the building designs have changed over time to not include that walk-up, which is one reason why they're requesting to remove the sidewalk, in addition to the costs and grading that would be associated with installing it.
Understood. The sidewalk in front of the other buildings, is that in place and planned Because
So
it's,
currently, the buildings that the cursor is hovering over, those have not yet been constructed, but that portion of the sidewalk connecting the sidewalk on the northern portion of the site would be required at the time of
Okay.
construction.
so it's just the small piece,
That's correct. They're
Okay.
just requesting to remove sort of a
Okay.
portion that wraps around this building.
thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, at
Council,
least-
other questions you might have?
Well, I was just gonna say that portion of the sidewalk doesn't loop into the rest of it, which is, you'd
Right.
think you would want, and probably makes sense to do that.
Any other questions for Nathan or for the project team?
I like the idea of going from 4 to 3 on the units to, just makes a little more space everywhere.
Correct, and with the change in design, I think I can support removing the sidewalk as well. So with that, I would move that council approve resolution 6/13/2203.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. Thank you for being here this evening. All right, council, next on our agenda is consideration of ordinance 709, the moratorium on wetland banks, and Abby, you're walking us through this. I will note, council, that this was a topic of workshop discussion on a previous meeting as well.
Well, that's how I was start that out. In April of this year, you were presented with the proposal of discussion for enacting a moratorium on wetland banking. As a reminder, wetland banking is the act of creating wetlands that can be used for credits to offset where wetlands are filled for other development. Our code is kind of silent on these, and we have had some murmurings that somebody may be interested in creating one. Given the fact that we have a lot of land, but our land area, our developable land area is kind of limited. We want to take a little time, put a pause in the potential for these, and enact our option for a moratorium. So the Planning Commission did look at this on May 11th, and are also, in addition to staff recommending that the council adopt the moratorium, just giving us some time to explore our options. I know the last time we were here, we also had asked you to authorize a study. We're not really sure what that means yet. So right now, what we'd like to do is enact the moratorium, give us some time. We'll come back with a little bit of a plan of how we're gonna take that time to figure out what we can and cannot do going forward, what we may or may not do going forward.
Madam Mayor, this is something I felt pretty strongly about during the workshop on City of Forest Lake has plenty of wetlands of our own, and they're natural, and I agree with the idea that using up land space really needs to be looked at before we move on. So I'm certainly in support of this ordinance. Gives us some time to look at it.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I had the bulk of my questions answered at workshop, but it was clear to me that we needed to push pause on this while we gathered some additional information. So I too am fully in support of a moratorium.
Yeah, agree. Definitely needs some study and certainly some indications of if this makes sense within Forest Lake, where, and certainly opportunity for some study.
Based on that, Madam Mayor, make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 709, the moratorium on wetland banks.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. We'll move on to ordinance 710, which is related to 18440 Forest Road North rezoning. And Abby, this is yours as well.
Yes, thank you. John Cook of Right Way has proposed to rezone the property at 18440 Forest Road North from agriculture to limited industrial business. He owns a contracting services firm, this Right Way Contracting Services. They help provide the means to install mobile homes. However, on his facility, there wouldn't be any mobile home operations. It would be for indoor storage, officing, and then potentially a future sales area for patio backyard products.
So when we're looking at rezoning, we look to see that they're consistent or compatible with the comprehensive plan, and whether or not they're consistent with the zoning code. So you need to make the findings that the request tonight is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and that contracting uses are a use that is substantially similar in the B3 district. So this site is a 21, give or take, acre site. It has had historically agricultural operations, and that is an existing use. No matter what the property changes to, be that the B3 district now or some other district in the future, to be consistent with the comp plan, that single-family use and that agricultural use are going to become existing non-conforming. So right now, this is kind of the idea for Mr. Cook, was to have this as a use for the property until the time that that development along that 61 corridor south of where our urban services extend to is really a good kind of temporary fit. Some of the difficulty that we have in rezoning properties right now is whether or not, specifically this one, if Nathan can bring it up on the board, the property has got a split future land use. The eastern side of the property is guided for mixed-use development, whereas the western side of the property is guided for this highway business district. So no matter what, we're kind of going to be in this conflict of what fits in one versus what fits in the other. The eastern side of the property, and I don't know if we have an aerial, if you could pull that up for me, Nathan. The eastern side of the property is that agricultural land. It's vastly open, whereas the west side is got that kind of development activity that's occurred. That's where the activity would be occurring with Mr. Cook's operations. The mixed-use district supports a mix of industrial and commercial, but it's not quite an exact fit because that mixed use, we also want to have that neighborhood compatibility, whereas the highway business has a little bit more of that feel to it. It should be noted that urban services aren't anticipated to extend to this area until sometime between 2030 and 2040. Development patterns could push that quicker, but we don't plan on kind of moving that urban boundary, those urban services further than that anytime soon. So when we look at this, we look at whether or not the use is compatible with the adjacent properties, the suitability, creation of nonconformities, public facility availability, and kind of buffer transitions. This is ag land with ag land around it. The closest developed thing is Tanner Brook Golf Course, just slightly small portion of the property. Staff finds that this is a very suitable use for the property for this kind of interim time period until we kind of figure out what that 61 corridor and that highway business district's really going to look like. I will note that the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on the matter, took testimony from members of the public, did field some comments about concerns that the public has. A lot of concerns more about traffic, noise. For the most part, however, the operations are going to be a minimal change from what is occurring there on site right now. So staff does recommend that you consider rezoning of this. Right now, rezoning is ideal. It's a better use and more conforming to the comp plan, and it'll kind of help provide that interim use to the site and the surroundings till such time as urban development is kind of met down there. So staff recommends you rezone. Staff and the Planning Commission recommend you rezone the property from ag to the limited industrial business. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Abby. Council, questions we may have for Abby on this?
Oh, I guess, was there any comments about the extra traffic on Forest Trail there itself? Because kind of off the highway there.
Sure.
You know, I mean, and I can see it's not directly adjacent. I mean, it's adjacent to the highway, but you don't have direct access to it.
Right. There there were questions, and Mr. Cook had, the business plan and the business model is his staff would meet on site on Monday mornings, and then they take assignments and they go off-site the entire week and then come back on a Friday afternoon. So the business traffic would be very much limited to about 2 times a day or 2 times a week, other than Mr. Cook being in every day and maybe an admin in the office. So the traffic is going to be very limited. There has been discussion about the heavier truck traffic that could be occurring on that site. Mr. Cook runs a reputable business. It's been in existence for decades. He has indicated that his preference to keep that roadway as clean as possible to help keep down on the impact on his own vehicles.
There's been heavy farm traffic on that road too over
Yeah.
time, so. I guess the big thing of dust and that sort of thing, but it shouldn't be an effect there, I wouldn't think. So that's just my opinion.
Sure, and I will note that the applicant is in the audience if you have any questions for him as well.
Question, so should council approve the rezoning tonight, what happens next? It's not really a development, that proposal that would
No.
move forward, is it just switch use and
Yep,
whatever projects?
it would allow for it. Mr. Cook has indicated that there are existing occupants on the site, and that there'd be a time period in which that phased transition would occur. We've been notified that during this process that there is a non-conforming business operating. It's an asphalt restoration company. We would also have to start proceedings to put a notice of violation. They're in violation in the ag district. They'd be in violation of the new district. We kind of wanted to work through this process to make sure we had our zoning district right when we send that first notice out. There'd be a time period in which that process would occur. And that being said, he has proposed outside sales for patio, I think it was patio backyard products. Prior to those occurring, a site plan would need to occur, a site plan review process would need to occur. Additionally, the conversion of use from that farmhouse into an office will need building permit through the building inspections division. So there'll be some oversight as we move forward.
Thank you.
Those were my questions as well, kind of that transition and, particularly the transition to sales on that property and, the impact that may have, on residents surrounding the area as well. So do we know what the proposal is regarding sales?
Sales are not proposed at this time.
Okay.
So, and Mr. Cook knows that prior to any sort of retail sales occurring, any exterior alterations to the site, that he'd have to come back before the city to gain approval beforehand.
Okay.
I don't think I have any questions related to this. I think it makes sense. This is not going to be the only property, I suspect, where we have some challenges with that split. And that was part of what was contemplated when the split was put in place for the comp plan. And this seems like it kind of makes sense for that future use. And especially considering we've got a existing property, I think that's probably been operating for a fair amount of time with some nonconformities, that this rezoning just makes sense. So I'm happy to support this evening.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm prepared to make a motion if.
Mayor Bain, I move adoption of ordinance number 710, an ordinance amending the City of Forest Lake official zoning map, rezoning property at 18440 Forest Road North, identified as PID 32.03.22.142.0002, from agriculture A district to limited use, or to limited industrial business B3 district.
There's a motion, and I'm happy to second. Any further discussion on this? And hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Thank you for being here this evening. Good luck with your project. All right, next item is 7E, polling place agreements with Washington County. Karen.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Before you, you have two agreements from Washington County. As you know, elections are coming up. What these agreements are is an agreement between the city and Washington County on our polling locations. And so Washington County will also have an agreement with Hosanna Lutheran Church. They don't need one, obviously, with their own site, but with our city building and then with the senior center, we'll have those new agreements in place indicating that, yes, these are our polling locations. We agree to this as a city, that this is where we will be holding those elections. So that's what those two agreements are for. agreements that they have with anybody that they have a joint powers agreement with. So it's recommended that we approve these so we can have our locations in place.
This was a fairly lengthy conversation at a workshop also,
It was.
and so this is basically what we talked about.
Yes, this is
Verbatim.
kind of finalizing where our locations will be then.
Yeah, Karen, I appreciate this has been a fair amount of work, so thank you for the effort in getting this sorted out. I look forward to no longer having 2 precincts in the city center. I think that added some confusion, and so good to have separate locations. So I'm happy to support this evening. With that, I would move that council approve the polling place agreements with Washington County as proposed by staff.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion this evening? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. Next item this evening, the Lexipol Grant Writing Service Assistant Proposal for Safer Grant, and Chief Newman.
Mayor and members of the council, up for consideration is a request to use Lexipol as our grant writing services company. I received notification here June 1st that Lexipol would be offering reduced grant writing fees for the month of June if we submitted a contract in that time frame. The typical cost for grant writing is $5,000. They're offering for agreements received in June for $2,500, so it's considerable savings for the grant writing service. In the memo, I provided information on what that grant, if received, what we'd be using that grant dollars for full-time staffing starting in budget year 2024. The SAFER grant is established to improve staffing and deployment capabilities in your city and to also reduce and mitigate hazards in your city. If we do receive the grant, this will have to go in front of the Joint Fire Board, the Forest Lake City Council, and the Columbus City Council. So this request is only for grant writing services, but not to approve full-time staffing at this time.
Is there a cost share opportunity with Columbus on the grant proposal service, or does?
Yes, this would fall through the regular budget.
Perfect.
So under the terms of the joint powers agreement, Columbus would pay a portion of this grant.
It's like pretty close, like an 80-20 split, something like that.
Yes,
right?
correct.
21 or something, whatever it is.
And to be clear, it's a grant writing service. It's.
Correct.
Yes.
Lexipol is the same company that we used when we applied for air packs, and they successfully assisted us with writing that grant.
Excellent. Well, I certainly I appreciate the need to have these positions on radar and to start planning for how we would fund them, and so certainly support the consideration of the SAFER grant and using Lexipol in that. I think it just makes sense, and to your point, Chief, they've been successful for us in the past. So with that, I would motion that council approve the Lexipol Grant Writing Service Assistance Proposal for SAFER grant.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. All right, moving on to 7G, 2022-2025 School Resource Officer Agreement. Chief Peterson.
Yeah, Mayor and City Council members, good evening. The first item I have for you is School Resource Officer Agreement between the City of Forest Lake and the school district. I'm very proud of our ongoing collaboration and positive relationship that we have built over the years with the school district. The school district and police department have worked together since 1994, when the first School Resource Officer Agreement was discussed and approved. For the past 28 years, we have continued that relationship between the two entities, and it has grown stronger each and every school year. I want to publicly thank Superintendent Steve Massey and the entire school board for working diligently and getting another 3-year agreement done. Staff recommendation is to approve the 2022 to 2025 School Resource Officer Agreement.
Thank you, Chief. Is there any questions for Chief?
Any changes to this agreement from past agreements?
It's almost identical, other than wages and benefits, which we changed up so it pretty much mirror the LELS officers' contract agreement. And then there is some language in there that we've done this at the last agreement as well, is when the new contracts come into play and they're approved by the city council, then we meet with the finance department over at the school district and discuss it with our finance department, and we make those changes as necessary.
Okay. And just to clarify, the school district pays this in full, correct?
Yes,
Out of their
so
budget?
what you see before you, they pay for one full-time school resource officer that's located at the high school. And then just for the school years, the middle school and the community school. And then those officers during the summer, like just right now, last week, when the kids all graduated, those two officers are back on the road now patrolling our streets.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions related to the agreement?
This amount, this all shows up on our total city budget when you're doing your budget, Rick? I mean, how is it listed
Yes.
in there?
As well as we can when it comes to the labor agreements
Yeah.
and the contracts and what are in place. But yeah, it's very, very, very close.
Okay.
And like I said, so for the officers' labor agreements expire this December 31st. And so depending on if it's a 1-year, 2-year, 3-year contract, we'll relook at those. And
I appreciate we've had a long-term agreement with the school district, and that this has been a great relationship, so, and one that, you know, as a city, we benefit from, and our police department benefits from the relationships that are built through the agreement, so I'm happy to support the renewal tonight.
And very much needed.
And
Very
very
much
much needed, yeah. Any further questions or?
No, Mayor
Comments?
Bain, I'd move approval of the 2022 to 2025 School Resource Officer Agreement between the City of Forest Lake and Forest Lake Area School District.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
thank you.
Don't go far.
Not moving.
Next item this evening, the Minnesota Financial Crime Task Force Joint Powers Agreement. Different topic, but also a need.
Yes. This agreement will allow the City of Forest Lake to utilize any resources from the BCA on financial crimes investigations and be reimbursed for any expenditures for larger financial crime investigations. For the past few years, just to give you an example, we've utilized a financial crime software program that we purchase, and the BCA actually reimburses us for that software program. And that software program, I believe, runs between $2,500 and $3,000 a year. And then this agreement, like I mentioned, will also allow us to utilize the resources of the BCA when there happens to be a larger financial crimes investigation that occurs in Forest Lake. And resources could be some of their employees or other resources and equipment that they may have as well. This agreement, and I don't have it, it's actually on my computer, expires at the end of this year, I believe it is, or maybe it's November, and I believe it goes through 2027. I apologize, I believe that's in my memo, and I didn't grab my memo. And staff recommendation is for the City Council to approve the Minnesota Financial Crimes Task Force Joint Powers Agreement.
Thank you, Chief. Chief, can you just talk us through, like, what kind of volume do we see? Like, how often do we use this agreement, or what do we see in terms of stats?
I don't have the exact cases in front of me right now, but it is amazing how many scams and frauds and forgeries and those types of things happen on a weekly basis, and even, you know, monthly, and so on and so forth. And this, depending on the type of crime that we may see, It could take a few hours of an officer's time, or it can take literally hundreds of hours. So this agreement is very much needed, and it's well worth it, in my opinion.
Excellent. Council, any further questions on this?
No, not for me.
I'm happy to motion, would move that council approve the Minnesota Financial Crime Task Force Joint Powers Agreement as presented by Chief and in our packet.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, Dave, our funding support agreement with Forest Lake Lake Association and the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is kind of a project that's been going on for a few years here, being more transparent. And step one last year was moving surface water management dollars into the stormwater fund. And then step number two was creating an agreement with Forest Lake Association, Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District, and the city into an agreement to kind of spell out how we spend the dollars, and just at the end of each one of our years, we can kind of show what we spent our money on and kind of split it up an even amount. So we started working on this last October, November, and kind of back and forth throughout the winter, and finally got to somewhat agreement in April. City attorney, their team reviewed it, did a kind of a change there, and went back to both groups, and both signed off and approved it. So before tonight is an agreement that's approved by the Lake Association and Comfort Lake Watershed District, or Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District, and basically what it does is put $150,000 cap on what we'll spend on Forest Lake, and it splits it between the city, the Watershed District, spending 42.5% of that dollars each, and then Forest Lake Association spending 15% of that. If there's an invasive species or something that comes up, the three groups will meet and negotiate if we need to go over that $150,000, if the city has funding, or the Watershed and Lake Association. So it opens that up if there is something that happens that we can talk to that. So, and on the flip side, if the year goes well and AAS is down and we spend $100,000, and that money percentage-wise drops down, and that stays in the surface water fund and sits there until something unfortunately bad happens and we have to spend that money. So it's a good agreement, and also having in the surface water management, it's a fund that stays in there, so it's not like the general fund where it goes away at the end of the year, so we can keep those dollars and earmark them for lake dollars if we don't spend it. So overall, I'd like to thank Jerry at the Lake Association and Mike and Garrett at Watershed. There was a lot of meetings and a lot of time going through this, so I think it's a good agreement, and I think at the end of the day, it's gonna be Lake Association, when they have their annual meeting, be able to explain what they're doing, and we can explain what we're doing at our MS4 meetings, and the Watershed can do the same at their board meetings. So I think it's a great agreement. And so any other questions you have for me?
Yeah, I would just comment, it's nice to finally have some clarity on who's responsible for what, and, not only responsibilities in terms of that management side, but the financial end of it as well. So, good work on pulling this together, Dave.
That's always been an issue. We never knew exactly who was paying what, or
Who's doing what, and
What,
who's
yeah.
paying for what,
Right.
agree.
So-
Yep.
this is, I know something that we've always wanted to do, and so I fully support it, Madam Mayor. So I would make a motion that we approve the funding support agreement with Forest Lake Association and the Clear Lake Forest Lake Watershed District and the City of Forest Lake.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Just chime in to echo the sentiments that have already been expressed, and also to appreciation to our partners at the Lake Association and the Watershed District on just great to have the transparency and the clarity of who's doing what. So great to have this in place and happy to support it tonight. Thanks also, Dave, for working through this. I know it's been a lot of meetings, so much appreciated. With that, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. All right, we are up to 7J, approval of a Public Works new hire, and Dave, this is you as well.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So with the retirement of Mark Munkowitz, it opened a position in the Streets Department. It's kind of a complicated deal here. So internal posting happened, and a utility person from the utility department took that and the internal posting, so that filled the street position. So then in turn that opened up a utility position, so then we posted for that, and now we're at that. So technically Mark was in the streets department, but we're hiring for utilities department, but that's just how it all went out. So Sam has 10 years experience with utilities operations. He worked at Olson Sewer. He's been there for about 10 plus years, snow plowing and utility pipeline and all that stuff. So I think he's gonna be a great add to the group, and if hired, he can start already next week. So just looking for your approval to hire Sam Swenson to join the utilities team.
Now, the pay grade, that's in line with what we're, with the union contracts all, so.
Yeah, that's, the last two hires have come in at grade 6, step 3. Utilities start a grade higher than streets and parks, so just because of
Okay.
the licenses they need to carry and expertise, so.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Any other questions for Dave this evening? And just to clarify, this is not a net new ad, this is a replacement for a retirement, correct?
Correct, yeah, it's
Yep.
basically a wash
Budget
across the
perspective.
board, yep.
With that, I would approve, motion for council to approve the hire of Sam Swenson at the position of utilities equipment operator at grade 6, step 3.
I'll second.
Yeah, 2
A
seconds.
motion and a second, we'll take a second from Councilmember Byström.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and motion carries. Council, that is the end of our planned action agenda this evening, and I, just quick checking with staff, I don't believe, do we have anything teed up for discussion portion?
We do not.
We had a lot of materials to get through this evening, so, all right. With that, we will move on to staff updates. Let's start with Karen, and we'll just go around the dais as usual.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As you know, elections are coming up, so I've been gearing up for that. Working with the county, and we have the joint powers agreement in place. I've been working with the county. In fact, I just finished the elections training today. It's a 3-hour training that is required by statute. So I did that. I'm also looking at elections is a pretty heated topic right now as we're moving into this. And I'm also looking at in the fall taking election certification with Humphreys School of Public Affairs. It's not necessary, it's not required, but all things elections, I think it's important to understand and know the full process. The agreement that we have with the county, it's a shared pile of work. County does a lot of it, but the city also has to do some of that work. And so having the full understanding of that process and realizing what could happen during elections as we go through a lot of these changes. The expected turnout this year is going to be somewhere between 80 to 90%, which is greater than the previous elections. The expectation is also that there will be a 50-50 split of absentee voters or versus in-person voters. So they're looking at how does that look when voters show up at the polls. There are some significant changes in terms of curbside. I don't know if anybody knows, but you can vote curbside. So there's a lot of interesting things that have come up in elections and changes that have come up for this election season. And then also big was the redistricting. Yeah, I'm all things elections right now. We also have a lot of zoning permitting that has come in, as I think community development and zoning can attest to. So I'm working through all of those, and data requests have come in hot and strong for whatever reason at this time of year. It's pretty big with data requests, some really big ones. So yeah, and then a lot of other things that I've been working on. But big thing right now is the elections coming, and also candidacy filing will be August 2nd to August 16th for anybody that wants to know. That's coming up. And if you have questions, you can go to either the state website, Secretary of State's website, or Washington County's website for elections questions.
Terrific. Thank you, Karen. Nathan?
Mayor and Council, no updates for you this evening, but happy to take any questions.
Okay. Dan?
Mayor, members of council, one update for you. I'm meeting with the art director this week for the website redesign. I also want to publicly thank Paul Peterson. As I've mentioned before, photography drives the website. He did submit a bunch of photographs of the city of Forest Lake, and the quality is top notch. So I anticipate a good meeting with the art director, since the photos I submitted were professional quality. So my thanks go out to Paul Peterson for his great work on the photography for downtown Forest Lake. So that's all I have.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. Pete?
Your Honor, no update.
All right. Patrick?
No update, but I would like to also thank Dave and our lake partners for finally getting this agreement done. It'll make budget time a little simpler and a little clearer, which is nice. Also, I was off last week, but I did notice that the girls' high school softball team won the state championship, and I would like to send my congratulations to them as well.
Excellent. Very nice. Abby?
Just a couple updates. We are going to be, it's anticipated that we'll be releasing our website for the Master Park Trail and Open Space Plan. It'll be going live this week. We'll be working with the Park Trails and Lakes Commission in the next couple of weeks to start doing an existing conditions inventory. So that's taking a look at all of the parks that are out there. What are the features within them, the conditions in them. And then we will be at Arts in the Park June 28th to gauge some public input about the park system, what people like, what they don't like. The city has done a lot of public outreach in the last couple of years to kind of gain some of this. We do have a not super old park plan, so the whole idea is updating that with some newer information, but we'll be out in the community gauging some of that impact. And I also wanted to let you know that I did speak with Washington County last week. Their CDA is just about to finalize what's called a Maxfield study. That's a housing needs study for the county. They update that every maybe 5 to 10 years, 7 years. That not only updates the county's housing needs, but also then the individual communities' housing needs and affordable housing needs. It'll start to look at some of those ratios between single family, multifamily. I know there's been a lot of conversations lately about just that and how that impacts some of the maybe ordinance developments, code development changes that we might need to implement. I also will be sitting on the Met Council's Community Designations Committee. That's starting out the conversations for a 2050 comp plan. I know it feels like we just ended. I know it, but the Met Council starts those really early, and that starts to feed into what they call their system statement. Your community designation, so we're classified right now as an emerging suburban community, and as a whole in the emerging suburban classification, we need to meet a net density of 3 to 6 units per acre. The closer you get to suburban and urban, that density requirement just increases. So I think it's very important that we're at the forefront of those conversations with the Met Council going forward. So that's all I have. If you have any questions for me.
Thank you for serving on that. Any questions for Abby? All right, Dave.
Just a few updates. Compost site has switched to summer hours, so that's open Wednesdays and Saturdays now instead of 4 days a week. The weed harvester will start operation this Wednesday, starting in lake 3 and then kind of working a we're working around the lake. So typically we start in Lake 1, so we're gonna start on Lake 3 and go the other way to try to even it out a little bit. So we'll take comments if people have, noticed higher weeds than normal. We have our zones that we can, cut in, but we're kind of gonna go and try to work our way around. But if stuff grows faster than the other, we can always modify at that point. So, and then the final thing is Forest Road. I know everybody has got some comments and have seen that done. Just make council aware it's a maintenance project. It's not a road construction project. Highway 97 and County Road 32 are scripted to be done in 25, 26, somewhere in that range, and that road is not going to make it to that point. So Public Works use maintenance dollars to put a microsurface on it, which can hopefully hold that together for 3 to 5 years until we decide what that road will look like. There may be a difference on both ends of that road, and we don't want to put dollars into that. And just so the council knows, mill and overlay approximately $600,000 to $700,000 to overlay that. Public Works did that for about $68,000. So it's going to fill in the potholes. It's going to fill in the wheel ruts. It'll get rid of the ice in the winter because we'll be able to plow it off. It's just not going to be a perfectly smooth ride. So if anybody has comments about the overlay, it was not an overlay. It was a maintenance project just to try to seal up the potholes and get rid of the wheel ruts. So just thought I'd bring that up because I know there's been some comments out there about that. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you. To that point, with 97 and 11th Avenue both kind of in plan here, when should we kind of carve out and plan what happens with Forest Road? Like, where does that fit? I feel like we've been kicking it. We've been kicking that can down the road.
They had the kickoff meeting for County Road 32. We're in pretty deeply in with 97,
Yep.
so we're getting to that point where we're gonna know, but until we know that final layout, and I think 11's probably gonna be the most major if we realign that could really change that, and that part, Ryan may go more on that, but that's probably the question mark. So you don't wanna do a quarter mile of the road and then have to just rip it up.
No, no, understood.
So and I think it's a very good test area for other roads like Eureka or these roads that the seal coat peels up on. And, if this can hold it together for 3, 5, 7 years until we can get that funding to get in these areas, I mean, it's gonna be a good fix, I think, or a very cost-effective fix versus, Public Works putting blacktop on and filling small holes that you could seal up an entire curb to curb for 5 years without potholes. I think it might be a very cost-effective system. So we did that road because it was probably the worst road we had. And it's gonna test it pretty well through a freeze thaw and see how it holds up. So I think it's kind of twofold. We had to fix that road, and it'll serve as a test to see how this works. The city hasn't used this before, as a maintenance activity. So it's kind of like the double chip seal, and we started doing that. That has done very well on these gravel roads that we've sealed up. So this is kind of double chip sealing a blacktop road is kind of what we're doing on this. So.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Ryan
Good segue to Ryan.
Mayor, City Council, the one update I was going to provide tonight was we did have our kickoff meeting for County State Highway 32 or 11th Avenue on June 2nd. And part of that scope that the city requested be in that RFP that county chose the consultant was to analyze the intersection of 4th, 11th Avenue, and then what the potential of a realignment of northern portion of Forest Road would be if those intersections could all line up and have a 4-way intersection for safety through that corridor, the 11th Avenue with the offset intersections. There's 3 of them, 4th, Forest Road, and then Centennial, and then you go to 61. So there's a lot that's going on there that has involvement with MnDOT's, Washington County, and the city of Forest Lake, and watershed districts as well because of the potential of stuff that could happen in that area. With Forest Road too, there's a lot of other things that need to happen underground, and obviously the capital is not there to provide for that. There's water main that needs to be extended and connected, although housing, that side of the lake area doesn't have public water, but they will never get it if we don't make that connection. Or you don't wanna go do a road project and not do that as well. On the south end, there's a lot of drainage issues and, items that we don't really even know what we would need to, take care of at this point in time until MnDOT finishes what really they're doing on that south end and that intersection too, so. That's where, you know, some more of a justification of what the work was done on Forest Road. And back in regards to 11th Avenue and County State Highway 32, obviously this very early in this project, that project is planned for 26 construction, so they're in a lot of gather information stages right now and just started the kickoff meeting, so that's where we're at with that. So that was my update for tonight. Any questions?
Any questions for Ryan? All right, thanks, Ryan. Chief Peterson.
Yeah, Mayor and City Council members, just a couple items for you. As you are well aware, last Tuesday they kicked off Arts in the Park at Lakeside Veterans Memorial Park. And once again, we're going to have officers down there every Tuesday walking around and just meeting with people, answering questions, and just kind of being there for community engagement. And I heard last Tuesday went really, really well, and the officers had a lot of questions for them, so that's good. That's what we're there for, to help answer any of those questions that any residents or visitors have. And then secondly, we have the 27th Annual Safety Camp being held tomorrow here at the City Center. Unfortunately, with the heat advisory coming upon us, we decided to cancel the actual bike ride that we do with the kids. It's just too far for them. We were going to visit the airport and have a helicopter land there, but we just thought it being a safety camp, probably a good idea to be safe. And we are going to be having just over 50 children here learning about safety, everything from fire to police to electrical safety, to just all the different kinds of safety topics that are out there. And we're going to have quite a few emergency vehicles here, and we're also going to be having the helicopter actually land here. So it's going to be somewhat chaotic tomorrow, unfortunately, for a lot of the staff, but it'll be controlled chaos. So that's all I have for you, unless you have some questions for me.
Excellent. Anything for Chief? Thank you, Chief. Chief
Mayor and
Lewin.
Council, I have no updates.
All right, very good. Okay, Kim.
I have no updates either, thank you.
All right, Kevin.
Mayor, City Council, just one quick update. Our auditors are compiling the final 2021 audit this week, so that'll be ready to present at the June 27th meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. And council updates, Councilmember Byström.
Nothing from me, Mayor Bain.
All right, Councilmember Husnick.
No updates tonight.
All right, just a couple quick updates. I'll echo Patrick's congratulations to the Rangers on the girls' softball championship. That was fantastic, fun news. And then just quick thanks to the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission for the really candid feedback they provided in their special meeting related to the review of the downtown plan. Lots of great feedback, a couple of specific items that stand out that I think we may want to consider making some amendments to the downtown plan. They felt very strongly about keeping the current bathroom facilities rather than, or keeping some sort of city ownership structure rather than moving into a leased model. And I think that there's some merit to that. And then also felt strongly, given the recent the timing and also the dollars that have been recently spent on the playground equipment, that they didn't feel like it was a good idea to consider relocating that equipment. And I think there's also some merit to that. So I know that feedback has made its way back to the planners, and just really appreciate their candidness and just a great conversation. Also, I think everyone here was at the open house for the community open house that we had on June 2nd. Really appreciate all members that came out and all of the feedback that we received. And I know Dan is working with a schedule on getting a revised plan in front of, or an updated draft plan in front of EDA Planning Commission, Parks, Trails, and Lakes, looking for resolutions of support. and we would expect that plan to be coming back to council late July for adoption. Seems to be the timeline that's shaping up. So lots of moving pieces, and appreciate everyone's work in getting us to this point. That was a primary topic of our discussion this afternoon at EDA. And also we'll note, we do have 2 open seats available on the EDA. And so actively soliciting, we've got a lot of activity happening there. And so really important to get those seats filled as soon as possible. So put on your recruiter hats. If you want to voluntold a friend to serve on the EDA, I'd happy to sit and have coffee with them and talk to them about what that might look like. So looking for two seats to be filled there. That is it as far as updates from me, and appreciate everyone's time tonight, and I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any, no further discussion needed. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose, and we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.